Okay, new video react, theft, lies, and lawsuits, the decade-long mobile MOBA war. So, I really do believe, way back before pa, na parang, oh, League of Legends, copied Dota. Pero, nagkamuwang-muwang ako na naglaro ako ng Dota, ay, ng League. So, it's like, hindi naman ganun. No? Konti lang. Inspiration. Inspiration. Okay, but, the Mobile Legends, bro, 1-to-1 eh. Anyway, let's see, no? Parang wala namang update doon. Alam ko kinasuhan nga sila tapos wala namang nangyari, no? And I know na masyadong tinatangkilik ang Mobile Legends sa Pilipinas. But, dito muna tayo. Facts muna bago mainis, right? Simulan na natin.
I did not expect to need to learn how to read Chinese court documents for this video. Multiplayer online battle arenas, or MOBAs for short, have become one of the most successful genres in video game history. From the old Dota mods on Warcraft 3 back in the early 2000s, to the now sweeping success of Riot's
Work for the Horde!
League of Legends, a franchise that has gone on to be recognizable worldwide, spawning plenty of spin-offs.
By the way, cool Jinx cosplay. I love that.
Media, such as music groups, shows, comics, action figures,
True.
this, and so much more. And with League's entrance into the esports scene in 2011, MOBAs took center stage of the competitive gaming industry, where Dota 2 and League would reign for over a decade. But both those games were built on PC engines, leaving the genre's potential on other platforms largely untapped. For about 5 years, between 2015 and 2017, there was a massive explosion of MOBAs in the mobile gaming scene. Tencent's Honor of Kings would immediately dominate China's gaming market, with its global version.
Talaga ba? Kasi hindi ko alam na may Honor of Kings na noon pa. Pero alam ko may isa akong game na nilalaro noon, yung ayun, Arena of Valor.
Arena of Valor, breaking into the top 20 most viewed esport tournaments of just those years,
AOV.
with Moontong's Mobile Legends right behind it. All of which would enter a decade-long battle for the top spot in the esports industry, even directly competing with League itself. But I'm not here to focus on these games themselves, nor their individual controversies.
True.
This rivalry has expanded far past the esports scene. Lies, plagiarism, sabotage, and more lawsuits than any mobile game should ever receive. So if you were hoping for just another video comparing these games and weighing which is better gameplay-wise, you've come to the wrong place. This is the story of what's been going on behind the scenes, going through each lawsuit and major controversy to understand what exactly happened between Riot, their parent company Tencent, and their underdog competitor Moontong as they were locked into what basically turned into legal guerrilla warfare over whose MOBA would come out on top. And it all began back in 2015 with Tencent's creation of Honor of Kings. By 2015, League had already become the most played multiplayer PC game in the world and solidified its #1 spot in the esports scene. Riot had already made $1 billion off of cosmetics alone, and they were set up to make almost another $1 billion just that year. Tencent, China's tech supergiant, and the creator of the moral abomination known as WeChat, had been watching League's growth ever since the beginning, slowly investing in Riot over the years until they finally held a 100% stake in the studio. And tensions were already high between the two. Riot needed Tencent to distribute the game in China, where, to be fair, most of the game's player base and revenue came from. But Tencent was taking a pretty hefty chunk of that money for themselves, just for distributing and managing the game. Money that Riot felt was theirs. It's within this period of tension that Tencent comes to Riot with a business proposition, not any sort of solution to the revenue distribution issues, but a request to open up League to the mobile market as well. Mobile gaming was booming in China, and having a casual, shorter match smartphone version would capitalize on a whole new, and potentially even more lucrative, audience. In fact, some ex-Riot devs had already created a decently successful MOBA for the mobile platform called Vainglory, proving that the intricate UI and controls could easily be ported to the platform. But Riot, officially just wanting to focus on the PC version, respectfully declined. So Tencent backed off, letting Riot continue as normal for the next few months, League getting more popular by the day. It's sometime in mid-2015 that some leaked screenshots from Tencent's new project end up in the hands of a Riot.
Para sa akin, mas maganda naman yung gano'n na mag-focus ka talaga sa improvement ng game kaysa gumawa ng game tapos pabulok naman ng pabulok, di ba? I mean, iisipin mo din yung mga balance, right? Eh, yung ML kasi walang kwenta
employee, and they looked shockingly familiar. Is that our game? Had Tencent just blatantly ripped off Riot behind their backs and made their own unsanctioned port of the game?
Anong game to?
Yes, the answer is yes. Tencent just made the mobile version themselves through one of their in-house studios and slapped a new name on it, roughly
Arena
translated to
Valor.
Honor of Kings.
Oh.
This was after they had already given 2 attempts at bringing MOBAs to mobile that year, which were basically entirely different games than League and successful in their own right, but Tencent just decided to copy the entirety of
Iba na yung ano ngayon eh. Iba na yung itsura ng Honor of Kings ngayon eh. I'm actively playing eh. No? Gusto nyo ba ng gameplay? Daw magaling.
League anyway. We were stunned. They were blatantly ripping off our intellectual property. Also,
True.
I'd like to point out that in that same article, it's noted that Riot's founders said that they were working to educate Tencent on the proper use of IP, which I think is really funny, especially since a separate corporation later that year literally called Tencent the notorious king of copying, and Tencent's faced countless lawsuits over their plagiarism habits over the past several decades. Like how they're currently being sued by Sony for ripping off Horizon. Despite all of this, Honor of Kings released in China in November of 2015, immediately topping the charts as the most downloaded game in China, and remaining there ever since. Unsurprisingly, Honor of Kings never made it out of China because of its innate plagiarism issues, so a tweaked global version was released
Kaya pala until 2024 tapos parang yung ano nila parang pang 10 years na no.
a year later under the name of
Akala
Arena
ko
of Valor,
bago lang
which would go on to become the 12th most viewed esports game the year after that,
Talaga
being the
ba?
only other mobile game on the charts besides Clash
Pero wala na
Royale.
yun eh.
Tencent ruled the mobile MOBA scene. It's in 2016 that an underdog dev team consisting of just 20 members, with only one mildly successful game under the belt, decide to throw their own hat into the ring. The
Moontong.
Shanghai-based dev team, of course, being Moontong Technology. Moontong released Mobile Legends 5v5 MOBA in July of 2016, and the game was immediately met with controversy. Word was getting around online of it 2016.
Like Mobile Legends. Tapos pati yung itsura. Pati yung mga karakter, guys. Like, so annoying nung na.
And the game was immediately met with controversy. Word was getting around online of it being just another League ripoff. So Riot took a closer look, because there was no way that yet another soon-to-be successful game had blatantly
Alala ko to. Walang-wala na to, no? Si Akai. Sana inayos pa nila. Stick Grill, Saber, no? Ayos na ayos pa eh. Oh, si Alucard na Devil May Cry.
plagiarized League of. It was another blatant plagiarism of League of Legends. Yet another company had ripped Riot's
No, this is 1-to-1. Pati yung logo sa gilid, oh. Kinuha.
entire game. ML fans, hold your hate comments. I know you've heard this 1,000 times before. I'll defend you later. The crazy thing is, this wasn't even Moontong's first time copying Riot. That only other game under Moontong's belt, Magic Rush Heroes, had directly stolen over Riot. That only other game under Moontong's belt, Magic Rush Heroes, had
Okay. Sealy.
directly stolen
Watson. Salmon. Si Rise.
over a dozen
Sina.
of League
Karna.
champions just a year prior, and Riot had played nice with them back then, working with their distributor to resolve the copyright infringements so that the game could stay on the market. All of which was happening while Moontong was actively developing Mobile Legends, a game that had seemingly just taken even more features from League. Yikes. But both Magic Rush
Pero
and
may
Mobile
shield na si
Legends had
Tigreal.
already done pretty well for themselves on the Southeast Asian market, gaining hundreds of thousands of downloads before 2016's end, with Mobile Legends even Asian market,
Ano
gaining
daw?
hundreds of thousands of downloads before 2016's end, with Mobile Legends even competing with Arena of Valor on the charts due to its faster match times and broader device optimization. Riot was fed up. They couldn't do anything against Tencent since Tencent literally owned them. But Moontong, they were just some small company. Riot sent Google a detailed request demanding Mobile Legends to be removed from Google Play. Yet before Google could even take action, Moontong had discreetly removed Mobile Legends on their own. And
Talaga?
after a few months, they had a brand new game out in its place,
okay.
called
Nilagyan nila ng bang bang.
Mobile Legends Bang Bang. It was the exact same game as 5v5 MOBA. They barely changed anything. Riot filed their first complaint against Moontong to the Central District Court of California on July 6, 2017, alleging Moontong's ongoing, willful, and bad faith infringements of Riot's intellectual property. This is the one you've probably heard of before. And oh boy, is this document loaded.
Sigarin.
Riot goes through each game one by one, starting with Magic Rush, providing comparisons of each
Flame Jet. Oh, yun nga na may first
champion
game
and their
yan.
accompanying abilities that Moontong had blatantly ripped directly from their game. There's been a solid 2 months between me writing this part of the script and actually recording it, and I still can't get over that Moontong's version of Warwick was just called Jacob. Like,
Jacob. Why? Why you call it Jacob? No! It's like, whoop! Jacob! Tuy! Tutoy! Jacob.
I have to at least give that to them. Then Riot moves to mobile
Oh no! They call it Jacob.
Legends 5v5,
Okay.
going through each blatant infringement of League's name, map,
Kaya nga yung Legends. Ginawa mo pa ding malaki yung L tsaka yung S sa dulo. Summoner's Rift. Okay, bang. Grabe nga pero ibang-iba na din yung itsura ng Mobile Legends ngayon, to be fair.
minimap, enemy classes, objectives, logo, victory screen, and other in-game artwork. Moontong had even directly copied specific monsters and their spawn areas, detail for detail. Okay, pause. I wrote this entire segment before I got access to extremely early Mobile Legends 5v5 gameplay, which took me a solid day to find since all of it is basically lost media at this point, and any search results for the game's name have been eclipsed by
Si Gushon.
Moontong's Indian release of the game, called Mobile Legends 5v5. How convenient. Regardless, I was going through that old footage to make the beast comparison graphic that I showed in the last segment, and I noticed the difference between Riot's screenshot
Gap.
and the old footage. At first I thought that Riot had mistakenly put a screenshot of Honor of Kings in there, but no, that's an earlier version of 5v5 MOBA, which looks identical to Honor of Kings. And if you were paying attention earlier, the mini-maps between the two games are exactly the same. Now, I'm not saying this as fact, and for legal reasons this is merely harmless speculation, but as of right now in the video, it feels like Moontong had ripped Tencent's exact version of the map, used Riot's original monsters and aesthetic, and then just threw in any random copyrighted character that they thought would be funny to see in League. This isn't addressed in Riot's document, obviously, nor in any other video I've seen covering the lawsuit.
Bro, yung itsura ni Bane dati. Yung sa Pirates of the Caribbean. Yung pangit na ba? Si Axe, yo. Okay.
But Mobile Legends was full of other plagiarized material as well. Dante from DMC was just straight up in the game, by name. This isn't edited.
Ginawa nilang Alucard.
That was his name. And in case it needs to be said, they didn't have permission to put him in the game. They quickly changed his name to Alucard and eventually made him Blue because I guess they realized they didn't want to get sued. They quickly changed his name to Alucard and eventually made him Blue because I guess they realized they didn't want to get sued again.
Okay.
But it just goes to show how uncreative and unprofessional Moontong was in the very early stages of this game. I don't even know what to make about Kung Fu Panda also just straight up being in the game, nor the fact that Moontong would actually collab with Kung Fu Panda 6 years later. Okay, back to the lawsuit.
That's
Riot ends
awesome,
the section by addressing Moontong's removal of Mobile Legends from Google Play after their complaint just to republish the game with minor changes under a new name to hide the ball and continue to profit off their infringement. Now, to put an actual point in Moontong's corner, it's kinda hard to make a MOBA that doesn't at least somewhat resemble League, or Dota, and Dota 2, and like every other MOBA ever, especially in the map itself with their classic 3-lane structure. But it's the fact that Moontong copied literally everything else.
True, pero kaya mong yung game play style inside the game, no, manipulate, make rules, no. Hindi yung ganito lang. Diyos ko.
Their font choice, map-specific details, artwork, everything. It's clear that Moontong deliberately blurred the lines between their game and League to bring in fans who want the visually authentic feel of League on mobile instead of the now distantly related Arena of Valor. That's where the line is drawn between inspiration and direct plagiarism. So, because of these overt violations of intellectual property from these these 3 games, as well as lasting brand damage from the confusion, Riot requested entitlement to compensation for damages and profit loss in amounts to be proven at trial, or maximum statutory damages of 150,000 USD per copyright infringed under the US Copyright Act. At the very end of the complaint, Riot even cites the specific email that they had sent to Google in request for Mobile Legends 5v5 to be removed from Google Play, ending the email by showing the top reviews on the app, all of which directly stating how they felt the game was just a copy of League, signing off with this absolute banger of a sentence. Now, I wasn't going to include this for time's sake. Signing off with this absolute banger of a sentence. Now, I wasn't going to include this for time's sake, but this video has already gotten so insanely long in comparison to my normal content that I just don't care about runtime anymore. Moontong, hilariously, posted a short official statement on Facebook in response to the complaint literal days after Riot filed it, saying that some media have published negative and unreal reports against Mobile Legends, and that they reserve the right to protect themselves and pursue legal action, as legal action was already being pursued against them. That last line about reserving the right to pursue legal action is especially ironic, considering the next steps they took were to avoid it at all costs. Unfortunately, Riot's complaint never even made it to trial. The Central District Court of California, after a request from Moontong under the Forum Nonconvenience Doctrine, which, to my understanding, allows the defendant to advocate for the case to be held in a different, better-suited court district, ruled that this case would be better taken to a Chinese court due to Moontong being registered in China, as well as Riot's parent company. A ruling that Riot never followed up on, at least within the specific suit, despite public belief. But we'll get to that shortly. In fact, this complaint really only made things worse for Riot, as news of it spread, only bringing more traction to Moontong's game, making its debut in esports that year and climbing into the top 25 most watched tournaments of 2017. Riot had failed their first attempt at bringing their competitor down, so now it was Tencent's turn.
Okay.
Tencent made their first strike against Moontong sometime in early 2018, taking Moontong's former CEO to an intermediate people's court in Shanghai over an allegedly violated non-compete agreements contract, stating that anyone employed under Tencent couldn't also be employed by a competitor during their time at the company, which wouldn't have been a problem if Moontong's CEO hadn't co-founded Moontong back in 2014 while still being a senior developer at Tencent, directly breaching their contract. Which, side note, makes this look really bad. I mean, it already looked pretty bad. They had a PNG of Kung Fu.
Hindi ko maintindihan why. Maybe engineering ko. I didn't know that this was this bad. Bro, what the heck? It's 1-to-1 copy, bro. How bad can you be?
Panda in their game. But now it somehow looks even worse. Tencent would eventually allege that Moontong's CEO had used trade secrets to create Mobile Legends, such as confidential code and assets, which I originally wrote off as being insane. But now I just don't know. Their CEO being a former dev at Tencent means that
ito pa yung hawak ni iba na.
the map that Moontong
10 tons pa yata yan.
used might have actually been Tencent's. And there's actually a pretty solid test for this. The old version of Honor of Kings had the game's logo in the center of its spawn areas, which was a pretty clever design choice. And we can both agree that it would look extremely bad for Moontong if the Honor of Kings logo was also in the early screenshots of Mobile Legends, right? Like, we can universally agree that that would look really bad, right? Well, it is. That's straight up the Honor of Kings logo.
Ew. Okay.
Choice. And we can both agree that it would look extremely bad for Moontong if the Honor of Kings logo was also in the early screenshots of Mobile Legends,
Like exact
right?
one to
Like,
one?
we can universally agree that that would look really bad, right? Well, it is. That's straight up the Honor of Kings logo in Moontong's game. And it's not just in Riot screenshots. It's even in old promo art. Although it's flipped.
This is so bad.
Like, that would help. Now, this
It's
doesn't it's
flipped.
even in old promo art, although it's flipped. Like, that would help. Now, this doesn't mean that Tencent's code was actually used to make
I mean, nilagyan lang nila ng bang bang.
the game. But it sure looks like their visual assets were. There's been a lot of discussion online of if what Moontong is doing and has done actually counts as plagiarism, and it blows my mind that this is just never brought up in any of those discussions. Someone else's logo was literally in their game. Oh, and if that wasn't already enough evidence, here's some extra screenshots comparing assets from the different footage I have
This is so
side by
bad.
side.
Iba naman, no?
And remember this picture from Riot's court document? Here's that same location in the old Honor of Kings footage.
Very yikes.
But they didn't just potentially steal the map. The more I researched for this video,
Ganito gawin nyo, maglagay kayo ng parang League of Legends tapos maglagay kayo ng secret shop. Diba? Parang Dota.
the more it seemed like they potentially stole the rest of their game too. Here's some side-by-sides of their old character selection screens.
Uy! Si Dharma, matagal na palang nandun. Kilala natin. Sabi sa inyo, naglalaro tayo ng ano. Okay. Skin ni ano to? Ni basta yung ADC na ano. Na si Renji. Si kalimutan ko yung mga pangalan nila. Okay, si ano to, si Soul ano. Tapos ito si ano, yung mabilis yung attack speed na top laner. Si Lady Z something. Okay, wow, galing ah.
Loading screens, and specific champion cosmetics and animations, all of which are nearly identical. There's even a potential narrative here. By the time the CEO had left Tencent, Arena of Valor hadn't been publicly announced. I thought it was really weird for Mobile Legends, a Chinese game, to be originally released in Brazil, then slowly rolled out worldwide.
Sa Brazil. This is so crazy.
In the next year, everywhere except for China, where it wouldn't be released until this year.
Whoa.
But now we might know why. The game's wiki says that they released it in Brazil to avoid Chinese regulation and competition, which is valid. But it seems like, again, this is merely speculation, but it simply seems like Moontong CEO had ripped Tencent's exact map, UI, and whatever other features that may be visually undetectable to make a game that could be legally released in other places in the world to serve as the unofficial global version of Honor of Kings, and avoided releasing it in China because that's the only place that people would have noticed the direct similarities.
True.
And then they put Kung Fu Panda in their game. So then maybe all that
Tapos si Franco mukha pang patch,
plagiarism
no?
of League's aesthetic was left over from Tencent and wasn't actually Moontong's direct fault. No, that's what Moontong added to the game. They added completely new enemies to better copy League and changed the ones that Tencent did have to make them look more like League's, and then used League's font for the logo. You have to understand, this looks really bad for Moontong, and things somehow only get worse when you overlay the map from that footage I have. They had at least removed the Honor of Kings logo, but the maps are still virtually the exact same. They just built over it with each update to slowly hide what they had done. Though I guess they realized the irony of literally throwing a tarp over their plagiarism, because by the time of the Tencent lawsuit, Moontong had done a complete graphical overhaul of the game. So
True.
the visual
Ibang-iba na yung Mobile Legends ngayon.
assets that may or may not actually be Tencent's hopefully aren't in the game anymore. However, of course, Tencent couldn't take Moontong to court over direct plagiarism since they, also plagiarized. And Tencent couldn't help with Riot's lawsuit since they'd basically be suing themselves. So they settled on just going for the violated contract, in which Shanghai's court actually ruled in Tencent's favor when it was brought to trial, awarding Tencent a settlement of approximately 2.9 million USD. Yet, when news of this ruling went public, yes, there's more. There's so much more. I'm going insane. Information was a bit distorted. Popular YouTubers were claiming that Tencent's settlement went to Riot, and that the case in general was a continuation of Riot's prior complaint, saying that they had won against Moontong over the copyright infringement, which is just wrong. When trying to find YouTube videos that actually defended Mobile Legends from the plagiarism accusations, I, 1, couldn't find many, which sucks, and 2, ran into an even more recent video still claiming that the 2.9 million was paid out to Riot because of the plagiarism lawsuit. And it's just the same guy. Stop claiming the 1 million people that Riot won the lawsuit. They didn't. Tencent did. But this misinformation led to a lot of people thinking that Moontong
Fake
had already
news.
received punishment over their infringement, and that Riot was overreacting when it came to later cases. It's not like this victory really did anything either. It seems to have forced Moontong to change their CEO for PR reasons, but it hadn't dissuaded the company from continuing to support Mobile Legends as it climbed the ranks in the esports scene, skyrocketing to 7th place on the esports charts, still right behind Arena of Valor. Nor brought any sort of justice to Moontong's blatant plagiarism, which they had still continued throughout both lawsuits. It's in late 2019 that Riot, after seeing how both rip-offs of their game were quickly catching up to their esports throne, would finally acknowledge their mistake of not bringing League to the mobile platform, announcing on League's 10th anniversary that they'd finally give the mobile market their own shot in the mobile genre, with League of Legends Wild Rift, an announcement that would send waves throughout the mobile community, but only to get dwarfed by news spreading of arguably the biggest scandal in this entire war.
Bro, what?
Sometime in 2019, Moontong had filed their own lawsuit against Tencent over commercial defamation, alleging that Tencent had gone off the books to spread false information about Moontong to discredit and ruin their public reputation. But that would be crazy for a mega corporation currently ranked as the 15th most valuable company by market cap, worth $800+ billion, to stoop that low against an underdog game dev studio worth like $4 billion at max that they had just won a lawsuit against. They were found guilty? What the fuck?
What?
According to the case, Tencent had allegedly hired an Indonesian-based lawyer to send letters to one of Moontong's partners, Revival TV, who was set to help host the Mobile Legends Professional League tournament in Indonesia that year, spreading the false narrative that Moontong's CEO used trade secrets to develop Mobile Legends to tarnish Moontong's public rep and dissuade Revival from hosting the extremely popular tournament that year, which is just insane. The actual effect of these letters haven't been made public, so it's unknown just how much damage was actually done, especially since the tournament still ran and did pretty well, contributing to Mobile Legends finally surpassing Arena of Valor to become the third most watched esports game of 2020, with Free Fire being the only game standing in the way of it finally directly competing with League itself. But it's still absolutely wild that Tencent would stoop this low against a still somewhat small mobile game company that they had just won a lawsuit against. The court ruled that Moontong should only be compensated for about $31,000 in brand damages, as long as Tencent made a public apology clarifying what they had done. An apology that I couldn't find. It's also in 2020 that Riot officially launches Wild Rift in Europe and Asia, eventually expanding to the Americas in the following months, bringing League of Legends to mobile in the most faithful and complex way than any other game on the market. Yet due to its staggered release and just how late it entered the mobile competition, Wild Rift never really took off the way Riot had wanted. In fact, the only thing it seemed to really do was give Moontong even more features to rip for themselves. This is the last lawsuit, I promise. Probably. Actually, I don't even know. I found an article from South China Morning Post claiming that Moontong had taken Tencent to court a second time over copyright issues, making a 5th lawsuit.
What?
But that article doesn't cite its sources, and any other articles on the lawsuit just cite that original article. So who knows? Returning to this lawsuit though, because throughout all of these events, Moontong had continued to infringe on Riot's intellectual property. Anytime Riot would update their game, Moontong would update theirs. League had a brand new logo, so did Mobile Legends. Riot made promotional material featuring original music. That music was Moontong's now.
What?
So were any visuals in that material.
What? Mukha nga super book yung ano nila.
And fonts.
Oh no. Oh no. Oh no, Mobile Legends. Oh no.
Moontong was even back to just copying their cosmetics and in-game characters. These are just...
Bro, look at the grill's skin. Yung ganun. Pero, pag hindi yun pinakita.
The same guy.
Ko lang.
And these. And all of the...
Hindi pinakita. Oh, so.
It's like they just didn't care anymore, if they even ever did at all. Moontong had never faced any true consequences over their infringement. In fact, the closest they had ever gotten to any sort of consequence whatsoever, besides Tencent's beef with the CEO and their little off-the-books endeavor, was a highly successful esports team essentially calling Moontong monopolistic after a scandal of the company allegedly banning Mobile Legends esport teams from also participating in Wild Rift tournaments back in 2021, directly targeting Riot to prevent their new game from entering the esports scene. I'd also like to point out that Tencent just straight up tried to buy Moontong at that point, which I guess was their final attempt against Moontong before they gave up completely. Instead, Moontong was bought by ByteDance, Tencent's direct competitor, for a whopping $4 billion, reportedly the 8th most expensive game studio buyout of all time. So, with all of that being said, in May of 2022, Riot returned to the Central District Court of California with a revised complaint against Moontong, covering all of their infringed content over the past 5 years. And this document was just a fever dream to go through. At one point in 2020, Riot released custom Nike shoes to promote Wild Rift, and Moontong even copied the goddamn shoes.
Yo, that's what... Kababayan. Why? Grabe.
5 months later, they just don't care. They also just straight up ripped entire gameplay features from
To be honest, nung naglalaro ako ng ML, mas nagustuhan ko yung update nila dito.
Wild Rift as soon as it entered beta, meaning that someone from Moontong had probably played the beta, said, hey, this is a great idea, and immediately mocked up a way to add it to Mobile Legends. And considering everything else in this...
Man. Oo nga, no? Itong full party Graves, yeah, I know that. Ginaya nila si Fiora.
Document, most of which I already mentioned earlier. In this segment, the amount that Moontong just blatantly ripped from League is actually egregious. The main defense for Moontong that fans make is that Mobile Legends has made strides to separate itself from League over the years, adding different mechanics or modes and having unique collaborations to establish some individuality. And Moontong sometimes listens to the community when they pointed out the plagiarism, making
Kailangan pa oh, you're copying too much.
Slight changes to the game to
Oops. You're copying too much. Reduce that. Reduce that.
satisfy the community's rage. But come on, it's just
it's okay since technically no.
Insane. Like, I'm glad they've made progress in differentiating their game.
You know what's awesome about Dota and League, no? Walang secret shop yung LoL. Diba? Walang Roshan na talagang una pa lang hindi mo mapapatay at the start of the game. Pero pwede nyong pagkaisahan gamit si Ursa. Diba? Bro, iba kung paano mag-work in jungle nila yung nagro-roam talaga. Diba? Come on.
But it doesn't excuse everything they did prior. And sure, mobile games especially have plenty of issues of just plagiarizing mainstream games to fulfill a need for those large-scale franchises on the mobile market. And the best way to counter that issue is for the companies of those franchises to just bring a version of them to mobile to satisfy the market. A mistake that Riot made a long time ago. But we're not talking about just some random small mobile game anymore that minorly profits from infringed content. Mobile Legends had surpassed Free Fire by this point, becoming the second most popular esports game in the entire world, with nearly $1 billion in revenue from cosmetics alone. Riot made this document as extensive as possible to finally bring justice against Moontong and end this now 7-year-long mobile MOBA endeavor, requesting all the same monetary compensation they had in their prior complaint, along with reparations for all infringements since. Riot even spent several pages justifying why the Court of California should hold this trial too, citing Moontong's US division and their involvement with California-based companies like Apple and Google, as well as the reach of Mobile Legends to US citizens, just to make sure that Moontong couldn't invoke forum nonconvenience again and dismiss the lawsuit in America for a second time. Moontong was finally going to get what they deserved. The court dismissed the lawsuit.
Why?
Again, I actually think I hate this law. Okay, the forum nonconvenience doctrine is actually really important to make sure complaints are handled in the right court, but it just means that Moontong has gotten away scot-free twice now using the exact same excuse. In case you were wondering how this is supposed to go, back in 2022, Riot had also sued a different mobile game studio called Imba, or formerly known as Suga, for blatantly plagiarizing Riot's Teamfight Tactics mobile game and League of Legends. Imba's game, I Am Hero AFK Tactical Teamfight, had directly stolen a bunch of lore and characters from multiple
Inisa-isa nila. Zach with a K.
Of Riot's games. Allegedly, Imba had even tried Moontong's whole forum nonconvenience tactic to dismiss the case in the Central District Court of California, and it was actually denied, resulting in Imba having to pay Riot $1 million and stop distributing their game. And yet Moontong had gotten away with it twice now. Riot actually appealed the ruling this time, but would eventually withdraw the appeal in 2024 after both parties reached a global settlement, officially ending their almost decade-long feud. Any details surrounding this agreement are undisclosed, with
Pas ginagaya pa rin sila ng Mobile Legends.
the only noticeable changes being that Moontong has heavily slowed their infringement rates,
True, pero yeah, may ganun pa din.
slightly changed some more of their older designs,
True.
and finally reworked their logo to fully step away from the League
I love that.
aesthetic. None of which excuses the past decade worth of controversy, but it's at least a step in the right direction. So that's that. Moontong had gotten away with it. They're now 1,600 employee company with offices all throughout Southeast Asia and China, now with a full suite of spin-off games, music, comics, and
To be honest, gusto ko din yung ginagawa nila right now, no? And mas nag-enjoy na ako. Pero the balancing on that game is ganun pa din. Pero, yeah, nakakatuwa na alam mo yun, may isa sa pinakamagandang game na pwedeng laruin at pwedeng ma-enjoy at pwedeng tangkilikin is merong sariling personality. Merong sariling identity yung game. It's not just copying random games or anything, right?
and even an animated show, allowing it to become one of the biggest mobile game producers in the entire world, which you can read all about on their official website with grammar issues and spelling mistakes.
Tournament.
All funded by their past consistent and direct plagiarism of League of Legends. And some other games, like fucking Elden Ring.
Why?
As of writing this in the year 2025, Mobile Legends has gone on to become a global phenomenon. It's cool to see a mobile game get so much love and attention in an industry where mobile games are typically looked down upon. It just sucks that it's a mobile game with so much controversy surrounding it. You're really making us look bad. I didn't even get into all the champion and ability similarities between ML and League. That's just a whole different rabbit hole to go down that I'm not qualified enough in MOBA mechanics to discuss. And I don't even know where to begin with talking about how
Surprise!
much Moontong had taken from Honor of Kings over the years that was just never
Kaiser.
publicly known because of the game being region locked to China. I mean, even their new map still looks extremely similar to Honor of Kings, having the exact same aesthetic. At first I would have chalked that up to coincidence, but after everything we've already discussed, I don't know anymore. Footage of Honor of Kings' updated map goes back to 2017, while Moontong only added their updated map sometime in 2020, which, keep in mind, replaced this, the map that replaced the one that they directly stole. And not only that, but Moontong is still updating their map with features that make it look more like Honor of Kings. So this is potentially the second time Moontong had stolen and financially profited off a game that couldn't compete in the same market, so no one would notice. I really wish I had more of a defense for this game considering just how popular it is, but the more I researched for this video, the longer the list grew of what and who they plagiarized. Dota, Reverse 1999,
What? No. This game sucks, by the way, the Silver and Blood. But Reverse 1999, peak.
Elden Ring again, Castlevania,
Oh no! I mean, to be fair, parang yun naman din talaga yung ano ni Alice.
it just goes on and on.
Oh yeah, inspiration.
Like, there's a difference between tastefully referencing pop culture to show appreciation for the media that inspired your work, which Moontong has done, and blatantly copying multiple game trailers shot for shot without credit, let alone using photoshopped copyrighted artwork in your game.
Sabi na si Pudge. Bro, sabi sa inyo si Pudge yun eh.
But maybe Moontong genuinely didn't know IP law in the beginning, which is why they thought it was okay to put Dante from DMC in their game, or profit off selling skins that have an extreme
Si
likeness to popular copyrighted characters. But they've been sued
What if binili mo yan, no? Tapos iba na yung skin itsura ngayon. Oh no!
twice over it now. That excuse doesn't work anymore. They should know that this is wrong. And listen, maybe from a moral standpoint you dismiss Moontong's copying of Honor of Kings because Tencent originally copied League behind their backs. Just like how people tried excusing Moontong's copying of League by saying that Riot technically copied Dota. But just to recap, Mobile Legends isn't just a game that minorly plagiarized or copied a few features from somewhere else within an already morally ambiguous genre.
Pati
They
yung-
probably
grabe.
stole visual assets and animations from Honor of Kings, tried to cover it up, continued to use their aesthetic while they made billions anyway, instead of truly differentiating their game, consistently used League's popularity to market their stolen game to a global audience, where Honor of Kings couldn't even compete, using League to inspire future updates, character abilities, and spin-offs, while also copying other game trailers shot for shot, and briefly using copyrighted characters and PNGs in their game. Some of which they monetized.
Pinonetize.
And then got nominated for Esports Game of the Year. What really
Ulit
sucks is that
siya.
I genuinely want to spend some time complimenting Mobile Legends on some of the actual original stuff they did. Their own artists have poured a lot of hard work into the game, especially over the past few years. But it's hard to look at all of that without the new lens that most of it probably
Si Franco. Okay na siya ngayon. Mukha na siyang Viking. No, buti naman. Dati butcher talaga si Pudge.
came from trying to cover up something else, or potentially was just plagiarized too and we just haven't found the original yet. It's so difficult to appreciate anything new the game does because now we'll simply never know if it truly is new. So even the stuff that is supposed to reference pop culture now
Even Nolan. No. No.
is new. So even the stuff that is supposed to reference pop culture now just feels like
No.
plagiarism too. And I don't want to sound like I've been just sucking up to Riot this entire video. They're a questionable company on their own. It's just hard to get past how much they've been wronged in all of this. Mobile
True.
Legends still hasn't beaten League on the esports charts, but the fact that it's gotten so close over the years is disheartening. It's weird to sit here and feel bad for an industry giant for once. Imagine being an artist or designer working on a cosmetic or character for a video game.
True, that's the most saddest thing here. No? Yung mga nagpapakahirap mag-isip ng concept, mag-draw, gagayain na lang ng iba. No? That's nakakalungkot. No? Para sa mga gan. Not the League of Legends itself, but the ones who make those characters that we love. No? Nakakalungkot. No, agree ba kayo? Gusto niyo na bang ganitong mga content, react, no? Wag na kayo maglaro ng Mobile Legends. Char lang. No, suportahan natin sila, no? Let's call them out. And gusto ko yung mga ginagawa ng players. Na, oops, hold on, Moontong. Ha? Masyado kayong nangongopya. Bawasan nyo naman, no? And that's why wala akong attachment sa sa Mobile Legends. It is because of that na parang feeling ko it's just a shell of someone, parang gano'n, or something, no? And gusto ko talaga yung mga na-appreciate kong games, yung mga unique, parang wuwa, diba? Dati parang 1-to-1 to Genshin, but by the time na nag-separate sila ng identity with the Genshin and make their own identity, bro, peak gameplay. Reverse 1999, peak gameplay. No. Anyway, ito lang muna sa akin para sa mga kapatid. See you sa susunod. God bless.